Yes, to be a socialist is to be the most consistent proponent of the precious ideals of freedom and democracy, of equality and liberty. It is the ideal that human beings ought to be able to participate in the decision-making processes in those institutions that guide and regulate their lives. To be a socialist, then, is to identify oneself with the downtrodden and the dispossessed, with the devalued and the degraded. It is to ensure that the poor, the working poor, the marginalized, the luckless, and the landless have a voice in the public conversation in this nation and around the world. In this sense, to be a socialist is to be a radical Democrat with a small d, a radical libertarian with a small l. It is a grand heritage, it is a grand tradition, and I'm proud to be a democratic socialist in the latter part of the 20th century.
How did you get to be a socialist?
It was principally my own reflections on the shortcomings of capitalist society as well as the shortcomings of communist regimes, trying to find a third way to build upon the best of liberalism, but to acknowledge the silences, the limitations of liberalism, to build the best on the communist experience, but also to acknowledge the tremendous limitations of communist regimes. Socialism is this third way.
My name is Carl Scheer. I'm from Chicago. I've been a trade unionist for over 45 years. Socialism to me means, in a capsule form, the expression social and economic justice. Justice for all, and in the workshop, that means the input and the workers to have a say in their work and in their life, to have the kind of a decent life that will let them develop to their full potential, and at the same time develop productive forces that will make for an advanced society, a society that will guarantee that which people could live and feel free. The problem today is that the economic insecurity is causing all kinds of problems, and the problems of the ghetto, of the where the jobs, the industrial base has disappeared, and where there are no entry-level positions for workers, young workers, to come into. So that socialism to me is a way of life. It's a way to fight for those things that are right in society, or to make things right in society, for national health insurance, for a shorter work week with no reduction in pay, so that we can put the unemployed back to work. The figures on unemployment are fake. That latest figure is not a realistic figure, because it doesn't count those who have given up. And so socialism to me has given me that wherewithal for which I've given my life, and I think that I've done a very good job, if I have to be modest about it. So that's my way of saying what socialism is.
Socialism means joining democracy and social justice and making America a society we can be proud of, as a humane and decent society that's at least up there with the advanced industrial democracies in Europe. A society in which it isn't normal for tens of thousands of people to sleep in the streets, for communities to be ravaged by industrial decay, and for racism to still exist. What socialism means to me is roughly what democracy meant in the 19th century. That is a modern society where citizens control their destinies, and a part of our destiny is now in the hands of the vast, large corporations and bureaucracy, which have to be put under human control. And socialism means to me, after all, also the United States joining the rest of humanity, beginning to think about the hunger in the South, the Third World, and the needs to have a decent world in which our children don't have to be afraid of war and destruction.
Socialism to me is the extension of democracy from the political realm into the economic and cultural realm as well. It is the deepening of the democratic rights that have been established by the struggles of working people and minorities in capitalist societies: freedom of speech, freedom of suffrage, the right to organize, free associations independent of the state, but then the extension of democracy into the economic and cultural realm. For example, in America, decisions made by corporations in regards to plant closings and movement of capital abroad has a more profound effect on working people, say, in the state of Michigan, than does any decision made by the Michigan State Legislature. Yet the predominantly white upper-class males who make those decisions about where auto companies invest abroad and when they leave and devastate Detroit are not elected by the very people of Michigan, the workers and consumers who are so devastated by those decisions. So for me, socialism means democratizing control over our economic and cultural life, including in the sexual realm, where profound inequalities mean that women do not have as full an opportunity to reach their potential as men, and of course the struggle against racism, which denies the fullness of opportunities to people of color in America. It also means, though, the militant defense of those civil liberties and democratic rights which have been achieved through popular struggles, and a clear enunciation of democratic principles that allows the American people to know that democratic socialists do not believe that authoritarian regimes in the Eastern Bloc, the Soviet Union, the Third World, that call themselves socialism but do not have full civil liberties and political rights, a multiplicity of political parties competing against each other, those societies are not democratic socialists. They experience problems for deep historical reasons that I can't go into here, but our belief in democratic socialism means the preservation of those democratic liberties that exist and we hold dear, but the extension of those liberties and democratic rights into the economic and cultural sphere as well.
I became interested in socialism as a young man during the Depression. I was very much affected by the fact that people were standing in soup lines, people were being put out of their apartments because they couldn't pay the rent, the fact that people were demonstrating for better living conditions, and I felt that in our society we could establish a much better form of society where people would not have to do without, because after all this is a land of plenty, and at the time we had a surplus that we were doing away with just for the purpose of maintaining high prices. And I felt that human rights, human people should come above profits. But apparently the people that were in control of our economy at the time, which is a capitalist economy, felt that making money was much more important than taking care of people. And consequently, this is what attracted me to socialism. And originally, I got involved in the movement as a student, and was also involved in a lot of anti-war work. And originally I joined the YCL and eventually migrated to the Spartacus Youth League, which was the Trotskyist Youth League, and eventually wound up in the Socialist Party. And today, of course, I'm a member of DSA. To this very day, I still feel very strongly not only about the fact that people are oppressed and are without homes and are hungry in the United States, but the fact that a lot of this oppression is going on all over the world. I can't feel right as long as my fellow man does not have a good life, and this is what makes me a socialist. I feel that we should all enjoy good living. And if my fellow man is not enjoying life, I can't enjoy life. And this is what socialism means to me. So I would like to, so this is why, and I think that socialism will be the solution whereby more people will have more of everything and a lot more than what they have at this time.
I think socialism is mostly involved with expanding people's power. One of the things that I think that socialism stands for is taking the kind of political control that we have, at least in a limited degree, in American society, and trying to expand that into other spheres, into economic spheres and social spheres. The way I got interested in socialism was when I was in school, was during the Vietnam War, and one of the most important frustrations for me was the realization that although I thought the majority of people were against the war, there wasn't really a way of stopping it. And so that's when I became interested in questions about power and control. Another issue that I thought about a lot was poverty. And I found the same things there, that instead of people really being able to solve what everybody agreed was an important problem, that somehow, even though everybody wanted to solve it, there was this stumbling block because they didn't have enough power to be able to challenge and change the system. So those are the kinds of things that I think are important in socialism.
Is it?
Well, I had always had I think, a sense of concern about injustice, and had been involved in the civil rights movement, worked a lot for Gene McCarthy. I was a mainstream Democrat, really, out of the Connecticut Democratic Organization. What really changed me and my feelings that that wasn't enough was in 1969 and 70 when I came back from Vietnam. I had spent a year as a Marine in Vietnam and came back really upset over what had been going on, and as studied and worked, figuring out on who was profiting from the war, who was, what were the structural reasons why the war had kept on going for a long time. You start to look at the whole structure of our society and of the large corporations and of the network of people they have. And it was out of that that came to a decision that democratic socialism was the best thing. It would give people control over their life. It meant not only a just society here at home, it would mean an awful lot less carnage and destruction overseas, and that the kids of the working class who ended up as my fellow Marines overseas fighting to sort of prop up American corporate role overseas, their lives would be spared. And as a father with a 7-year-old boy, I wanted to make sure that wasn't going to be repeated, and that's why I'm a democratic socialist.
And socialism to me is setting the conditions to end poverty, unemployment, and racism. In my experience, I was a steel worker for 9 years, and my plant closed, and I saw firsthand the pains of unemployment of mass layoffs caused by a capitalist system gone wild. And I saw once stable steel workers with families driven to suicide. I've seen stable steel workers' families blown to bits. I've seen folks, that once had a sense of where they're going become alcoholics and drug addicts because of the inability to be able to find a job and be able to provide for their families. So socialism to me is a way of providing the conditions to make a real fight on the question of racism. In this country today, racism supports and benefits the exploitation of millions of folks, black and white, and brown and red. My family, I grew up my family was sharecroppers from Mississippi, and I saw firsthand the horrors of Southern segregation, and I've seen firsthand, the horrors of the Klan and racism. It's a brutal thing that I've seen people's lives distorted, and for me, I think it's the most important, to set up the means where a person's value and worth is not determined by the color of their skin, but by the quality of their ideas and their being. That can't be done in a system where people are treated as commodities to be thrown aside based on the needs to enrich a small group, a small clique of folks. So that's what socialism means to me.
My name is Earl Borden. I've been involved in the socialist movement roughly since 1932. In 1934, my father was a socialist candidate for governor of New Hampshire. I think my enthusiasm for the socialist movement was born out of the fact that I met Norman Thomas on my 60th birthday. And it was a matter of love at first sight. And it meant a great deal to me, not only because of the great character that I think Norman Thomas was, but because it introduced me to socialism. And socialism, to me, is the basis for everything decent I think can happen on this world. Socialism would be, if we could get it, the basis for a truly just peace amongst the nations of the world, the basis for a truly system of brotherhood amongst all of the peoples of all races of all the earth, and the only way that we could guarantee there'd be a security, the idea of democracy. Since my early days in the socialist movement, I became a member of the United Steelworkers of America. I was involved in the organized labor movement with the steelworkers for over 34 years. Since I retired from the Steelworkers Union in 1967, I have been engaged and worked for the National Council of Senior Citizens that I presently am. And it's my great hope, while we're talking at this convention about doing outreach with the Rainbow Coalition in terms of progressive politics to move the Democratic Party farther to the left, I would hope that the socialist movement has some time to step in with an organized group of senior citizens that are socialists so that we can participate in the largest population group in America. There are more organized seniors in this nation than there are organized union members. There are more organized seniors in motion over the issues in Washington than there are organized union workers in motion, and they're organized in motion on the for the right reasons. The National Council of Senior Citizens and some of the other senior groups, particularly our own in New Hampshire and other local groups like us all over the country, are in the fight for comprehensive national health insurance for all Americans. And I think that DSA has something about them that could help the National Council of Seniors provide the philosophical basis for an intelligent fight for a system of national health insurance for everybody.